Hello, welcome to Secure the Continent, News Central Television. This is the program where we bring you up to speed with all the security happenings on the African continent. Before we delve into a major topic of discussion today, let me first bring you the latest security headlines across the continent. Nearly 50 bodies found in mass graves after militia attack in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. South Africa is to join China and Russia in a joint military drill. And the Wagner Group operating as neo-colonialist in Mali, says former French President François Hollande. And in East Africa, Kenyan forces killed 10 suspected Al-Shabaab terrorists. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. President Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo has accused the M23 rebel group of not fully withdrawing from areas it seized in the eastern part of the country, despite an agreement brokered by regional leaders in November. The agreement stipulated that a Tutsi-led group will withdraw from recently seized positions by the 15th of January, as part of efforts to end a conflict that has displaced at least 450,000 people and sparked a diplomatic crisis between the DRC and neighboring Rwanda. Tshisekedi stated this during a panel session at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, that despite international pressure, the group is still present in the area and are simply moving around and redeploying elsewhere and remaining in towns that they have captured. These were the most outspoken comments from Congolese authorities on the implementation of the peace deal yet.
The Somalia government is going all out on its foremost enemy, Al-Shabaab. With decades of fighting between both parties, sending many out of their homes and ending the lives of thousands, the Somalia government...
We apologize for that wrong intro package. And now joining us live to discuss all of this, I have Gedeon Baleke, a political and diplomatic analyst who joins from Washington, D.C. in the United States of America. I also have Kambale Masuvali, analyst for Center for Research on the Congo, Kinshasa. A warm welcome to you, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to start with you, Kambale. Democratic Republic of Congo President Felix Tshisekedi on Tuesday said the M23 rebels had not fully withdrawn from areas it seized in eastern DRC, accusing the militia of faking an agreed pullback of the forces. What's the current situation of things, and what's the status of Kibumba and Rumangabo?
Any area controlled by the M23 before the peace agreement up to now is still controlled by the M23. Explain why. When we're talking to people on the ground who are in the area, many of the traders who used to go across the border to Uganda to bring goods back to those regions are unable to do so without being ransomed by militia groups there, particularly the M23. Taxing them for bringing goods and so on. People who have been displaced in those areas have not been allowed to come back. The area has been put as a buffer zone, unfortunately, in something that the Congolese people are questioning. The Eastern African community forces who are there have literally stopped the Congolese army and the Congolese people to come in the region where they say that the M23 has left the area, and that's our concern. You know, Congo is a sovereign country. Its own military cannot be in the area controlled by rebels. Its own civilians who have been displaced cannot return into their homes, and it's reminding us a bit of what Kenya did in the Jubaland, where they have actually carved out the port of Somalia and created a buffer zone where even Somalis are not allowed to get in. So it's quite concerning that the M23 has not moved. The facts on the ground show that they still control these areas, and we hope that with continuous pressure on the Congolese government, the Congolese people can come back to their homes, to their land, so they can live peacefully on the land.
Thank you, Kambale. Now, Gedeon, so we know that the M23 have not pulled out and they're still in the areas where they promised to pull out from. So fighting persists in the eastern DRC as we speak between Congolese troops and the rebels from the M23 group, despite a declaration of ceasefire and troop withdrawals. Can we say that judging by the current situation of things, could we say that the ceasefire agreement is dead?
Absolutely. The ceasefire agreement is being compromised as we're speaking right now. Just yesterday, the M23 rebel group attacked some FRDC positions, and there are some military operations that were conducted earlier this morning from the FRDC to try to retaliate as a retaliating measure to the attacks from the M23 rebel groups. They've shown bad faith because they are not respecting the Angola mini summit agreements. They are not respecting as well the Nairobi peace processes. And the biggest concern, as Kambale has just mentioned here, is the buffer zone, which is being created by the U.S.A troops as well, where the Congolese army doesn't have a sovereign power, and it's raising concern on the Congolese side because we don't really understand the approach that is being used by the U.S.A troops.
Thank you, Gedeon. If you're just joining, you're watching Secure the Continent and News Central Television. We're currently discussing the situation in the eastern DRC, where there's a diplomatic spat between the DRC and Rwanda following the M23 rebels' refusal to withdraw from areas where they promised. Just to put all of this in context, let's play this package that has been put together by our production team to give you a background of how we got here in the first place.
After the Congolese government reached an agreement with its age-long Tutsi-led foes, the M23 rebel group, the national government in Kinshasa, has said that the group has not fulfilled its part of the agreement. The Democratic Republic of Congo is one of Africa's most populous nations. It is one of the continent's biggest and most resource-rich countries too. Despite the abundance of positive tied to the country, the security challenges have continued to cast a dark cloud. One of the continent's most notorious rebel groups, the M23, signed a pact with the national government in DR Congo to withdraw its troops from the communities. With January 15 set as the final date of withdrawal, the Congolese government has said all the rebel groups had done is to withdraw to another region. This, experts say, contravenes the agreement reached. The Congolese government had previously accused Rwanda of helping M23 gain strength and prominence in Congo, an allegation Kigali has since denied. But with the United Nations also corroborating Congo's claims, many Africans and Congolese believe Rwanda may be involved. There have been back-and-forth allegations and war of words between both nations, with no clear direction seen as of now. Troops from the East African community are in DR Congo to shore up the nation's military, but locals have protested their presence and have claimed their troops are on tourism. Allegations still roll, swiveling back and forth between Rwanda and DR Congo. In the latest of its kind, Rwanda has accused Congo of hiring Russia's Wagner Group to fight against the rebels, an allegation Kinshasa has also denied. The Congolese stories froth in rivalry, regional politics, and a proxy war, with resource control being its undercurrent. There is quite a lot to unpack, as M23 rebels refuse to park at the expense of a worried national government.
Now, Kambale, can you explain the background and context of the talks between the DRC and Rwanda that took place in Angola and Nairobi, What was the outcome of those talks, and why is it that the parties don't respect these talks? Were these talks signed, were this agreement signed under duress? Because, I mean, it's not even a month yet, and everything seems to be back to square one.
It's mainly because we are using the strategies of yesterday that didn't work to resolve the problem of today. We know why we have a conflict in the Congo. Congo has been invaded twice, in 1996 and 98, by Rwandan and Uganda forces. And after the signing of the peace accord in 2002, Rwanda and Uganda have continued to support proxy rebel militias. This has been documented in numerous reports, from Human Rights Watch to Amnesty to even UN group of experts. So we know the mechanism of violence that's taking place in DRC. So when we're coming back to the table, every time there is a crisis in the Congo with the same model of solutions, we will only get the same result. The M23 discussed today signed a peace accord much earlier in 2009. That didn't work. In 2013, after they were defeated on the ground, thanks to the SADC forces and the Congolese army, they actually withdrew from fighting, right? So and they put out a communique saying that they'll no longer be fighting and they're withdrawing from the position. So they completely disappeared. For 2013 to last year, there was no action with M23. And all of a sudden, they have returned to the scene with sophisticated weaponry. I mean, I know for a fact the M23 does not have a weapon factory. I know that they actually, whenever they withdrew from the land, they control, they went to Uganda and they went to Rwanda. They were not arrested there. They were actually given safe refuge. So now that we are talking about peace accords, right? It's a process that started with Kenya. The former president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, understanding the importance of the DRC for the region and the need for stability, called for a Nairobi peace process for DRC, bringing all the warring parties to the table to find out what they want and what will bring about peace. While this process was ongoing, the M23 decided to launch an attack on UN peacekeepers and also the Congolese army. That's what prompted the Congolese government to say the M23 is a terrorist group that in the middle of this process, this is what they are doing, and they were removed from the discussions. And they have continued to fight, and documentation, it's not just allegations, so it's very important to present what evidence has been shown to the world. We have video imagery, we have photo, and also documentation on the ground showing the Rwandan Defense Force with the M23 rebel fighting into the DRC. So that's what brought us to the Rwanda process, because Congo was ready to go into war. At the African Union, the president at the time of the African Union, the chairman was Senegal, Macky Sall, called the president of Angola to try to see how Angola could play a constructive role to bring about peace and stability before a new war starts between Rwanda and Congo. This is why Paul Kagame and Rwanda was in Rwanda with Tshisekedi to sign a feuille de route, as we say, a process that will bring about peace and stability. And one of the conditions of the agreement signed in Rwanda was for the M23 to withdraw from the positions where they were. Mm-hmm. They violated that clearly. But it's really important for people to know, in order for peace to take place, they did not bring the M23, they brought the president of Rwanda. That should be an indication, right, that Rwanda has a hand in it. Same thing with the United States. When the United States saw the evidence presented, though I don't support or agree with the U.S. position on many things, one thing that was fascinating, it was for the United States to say that the evidence presented of Rwanda supporting the rebel groups in the DRC is actually credible. And Blinken himself decided to actually make a phone call to Paul Kagame of Rwanda and asking him to stop supporting rebel groups in Congo. But we're continuing to see that the pressure on Rwanda to be stakeholder for peace in the region is coming from many places, not just the Congolese, but many different sources.
Belgium, Germany, France, to recall a few, but we'll get back to international efforts to restore peace in the eastern DRC. Let me bring in Gedeon at this point. Now, Gedeon, the Democratic Republic of Congo's Foreign Minister, Christophe Lutundula, on Wednesday accused the M23 and the Rwandan government of once more failing to uphold their commitments. There are also counter-accusations from Kigali. Kigali's communications ministry did release a statement yesterday saying, it's DRC's fault, that DRC is calling for war, and that they've even hired foreign mercenaries. So, for the sake of our viewers out there, help us make sense of this, since both sides are trading accusations and counter-accusations. Who's right here?
It's without any doubt that Kagame has proven himself to be a bad neighbor to the DRC. If we look at his approach, what he has been doing in the region, it's definitely wrong and it's condemnable. And the DRC is in the right to denounce that, is in the right to speak up and to call upon the international community in order to show to show to the world what Kagame has been doing in the region. He has been supporting these rebel groups for a quite long period now, and he continues doing that with other accusations claiming that we have FDLR in the FRDC. That is wrong, because if you ask him how many military official Rwanda knows who are in the FRDC, he will not mention the names. So there are a lot of debates around this subject, but Kagame has proven to be a bad neighbor to the DRC, and he has proven to be a destabilizing actor within the region, which is definitely wrong for the peace and stability within the Great Lakes.
Now, these were the exact words of President Tshisekedi in Davos, Switzerland, when he said, that Rwanda is a destabilizing factor in the Great Lakes region. So if the international community knows this, as France, if Germany, if the U.S.A. have come out to say this, and even Belgium, why has there been no moves to sanction Kigali or force them to stop M23 activities and meddling in DRC affairs? Because failure to do that would definitely enable him, and he will feel like he's an unstoppable. So how do we move beyond this point? Not just mere saying, the bad person here and the one responsible for supporting M23 is Paul Kagame. If you're just going to accuse him and fold your arms, it doesn't change the situation of the Congolese people that are feeling the adverse effects of this M23 incursions in the DRC.
Look, there is geostrategic interest here. The position France has had within the region and the relationship with Rwanda. We know the relationship throughout the genocide and so on. So they felt like they had that responsibility to always support the politics of Kigali and to always be silent because of the involvement in the genocide and so on. And because of that, France has been struggling to condemn the act or the foreign policy of Kigali, the policy of destabilization within the region. But recently, we've seen the French ambassadors condemning Rwanda and requesting to the Rwandese forces to stop supporting military operation within the DRC. That's a great move. We've seen the Belgium doing so as well. It's a new tendency that is at the table. Things have started to move in a new direction, and people have started to see the real face of Paul Kagame, the real face of his foreign policy and his involvement in the DRC crisis. So they've been protecting Kagame, these external powers, for quite a long period, and some of them still do. Of course, we have the United States, though they've condemned Kigali, but they still support Kagame somehow. We have France and the European Union that approved recently a loan or a aid of 20 million euro as a support to the Rwandese forces. And that was a controversy. You can support a military force which is destabilizing another country while claiming that you are advancing democracy and you want people to live peacefully. It's a form of sponsoring the crisis that the DRC is undergoing.
And it's quite a contradiction too. Now, Kambale, Rwanda has stated that DRC statement of accusing the M23 of not withdrawing amounts to a threat and accuses them of seeking to exit the agreements made in Angola and Kenya. Kigali also accuses Kinshasa of sponsoring citizens in Goma to protest against the presence of East African Community soldiers in the eastern DRC. But let's listen to what the people that are protesting are saying, and then I'll come back to you.
Aujourd'hui, puisque nous voulons déposer notre mémorandum chez Monsieur le gouverneur de province, lui signifia que la population est fatiguée de voir cette force inutile de l'EAC se transformer en une mission d'observation. Comment est-ce qu'on va nous massacrer et on nous tue? Or, ils sont venus pour combattre les terroristes M23.
Les forces kenyanes de l'EAC ne voulaient pas que ces gens restent dans notre pays comme le tourisme. Ils sont venus nous aider, mais jusqu'à présent, ils sont en train de faire le tourisme dans notre pays. C'est pourquoi aujourd'hui, nous disons qu'ils puissent rentrer chez eux, parce que nous ne voulons pas rester avec des touristes dans notre pays.
Nous avons manifesté aujourd'hui pour pousser la force de l'EAC à pouvoir lancer les offensives, comme le dit l'accord de Luanda. Malheureusement, le non-professionnalisme de notre police, surtout du général de la police, ils sont venus, ils nous ont violemment agressés.
So, Kambale, there we heard a range of opinions on the presence of the EAC in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Why are the people not happy with the East African Community forces there? I thought they were meant to be the good guys to kick out M23. And what's your take on Rwanda's accusation that, you know, these protests are sponsored by the government in Kinshasa?
Well, the people in the eastern part of Congo, particularly North Kivu and South Kivu, have seen UN peacekeepers for almost 2 decades in the region, and they have not seen peace. So they have a very good experience about seeing military forces in the region not taking action. They were hopeful by seeing the Eastern African forces coming into the region, but they also had questions. Most people were wondering, if the East African forces come, will that include Uganda and Rwanda? Because those are the 2 nations stabilizing the DRC. So those were concerned, and you saw in the configuration that did not take place fully. But then they start engaging the East African forces, similarly to what the UN is. They are observing the situation. They are not fighting the M23. They are taking pictures with the M23, smiling with them. The videos are there of the engagement with the M23 forces. And they have created a buffer zone. I mean, Congo is a sovereign country. There is an area in the Congo today that Congolese cannot go to, controlled by a foreign force. And they're actually telling the Congolese people, you cannot come here. So it's totally normal for the Congolese population in the area to say that we are not seeing the results. But the element that's often forgotten, the ESC is not in the DRC for free. Someone is paying for it, right? The DRC will pay for these forces. So they are paying for a service, and the service being paid for is not being rendered in a way where peace and stability is coming. Now,
sorry to cut in, Kambale. I just want to understand what the terms of engagement of the EAC are. Are they the same terms of engagement as the United Nations Stabilization Mission in the Congo, MONUSCO, or what is the instruction given to EAC? What exactly are they doing there if they're not tourists, like one of the protesters said?
Initially, it was presented officially to the DRC that they are coming to bring an end to all the militia groups, including the M23. right? That was the mission, that will go after the M23, the ADF, and any militia groups, so that the Nairobi peace process that's engaging can complete and finally Congo can have peace. But what he has morphed into is becoming literally an alternative to MONUSCO, a peace and stabilization mission where they are actually observing the situation. And that's what's worrisome, because if that's the case, there is no need to have the East African forces in the area. To the point of the communique from Rwanda, it's really fascinating that in order to know the position of the M23 or what the M23 is doing, all one has to do is to read a press release by the Rwandan government. So one will ask, is the Rwandan government becoming a spokesperson of the M23 in its press releases or not? And now saying that people who have lost their family members in the tunes of millions of Congolese have died, that the Rwandan government somehow has intelligence information that Congolese people in North Kivu are being paid to protest for peace and stability in the region. That's preposterous. That's not why the people are protesting. We have over 5 million internally displaced people. The term does not even really touch on what an IDP is. This is a family, people who had homes and who had to leave their homes, and for now years are living in the forest, are living in the bushes, and they cannot go home in their own country. So people are protesting because they want peace, they want stability, and more importantly, after 2 decades of war, they want to see justice. That we are tired as Congolese people to hear the same narrative again, that we know how it's going to end. Whenever they go to these peace negotiations, if they use the same approach, we know how it's going to end. And we know for that to change, in order for actually to have an impact, as long as in all the processes, there is no discussion around justice, it will never end. They always add in these peace negotiations a clause for amnesty. What does that mean? People who have raped, who have killed, they are asking the Congolese people to accept them as they are and integrate them into the Congolese army. So someone who was massacring civilians yesterday, because there is an amnesty clause, now is working as a Congolese army soldier. And tomorrow, when that soldier is committing violence against the civilians, the first thing that our neighbors, particularly Rwanda, will say, well, the Congolese army soldiers are ransacking homes, killing civilians, without actually stating that those who are committing these crimes are the former M23 or former militia groups who have been integrated into the Congolese army.
Thank you, Kambale. Now, Gedeon, the DRC and Rwanda have a long history of tension and conflict. And they also, the ordinary people of those countries, have a lot in common. They share some history, they share culture. What's the relationship like between ordinary people, not at the government level? And can you explain the underlying causes of this tension and how they've escalated in recent years?
The relationship between the Congolese people and the Rwandese people is on good terms. You know, the problem here is the government's approach from Kigali that has been bad for the region, and it's even bad for the Rwandese people. And we share a lot of things in common with the people of Rwanda. They are great people, and the approach Kigali has been using is to manipulate other ethnic groups within the region, namely the Tutsi community, to create a bad narrative around that issue, and that has raised as well concern in the DRC, where we have now this form of skepticism, not on all Rwandese people, but on certain Rwandophone people due to their involvement in these military operations and so on and so forth. So the relationship on the ground is good. People are in good terms. People are living in good terms, in good relationship. But there is this form of manipulation that Kigali has been using for the last 20 years in the Eastern DRC on other Tutsi community in the DRC that has created a narrative which has resulted as well under the creation of several militias within the region. And we need a strong approach from our government in order to bring all the people together and to show that we have here a common enemy who is trying to manipulate the narrative here and to create chaos so that they can continue plundering mineral resources and they can continue protecting their country as they always claim. I don't support that narrative, but Kigali always claims that they have to create a real base in the DRC so that they can protect Rwanda because there is FDLR. We don't know where those FDLR are, and we don't know how they represent the threats to Kigali. They always tell us to negotiate with other rebel groups in the region. Congo has been doing that, but if Congo asks Kigali to negotiate as well with those rebel groups or those groups Kigali is fearing, they are not willing to do that. You know, there is just there is this confusion created from Kigali that is really destabilizing the region, and it has shown that we have a certain group of individuals who just have bad faith and who are not willing actually to embrace peace within the region.
Okay, talking about peace within the region, it's a fine place to go on a break. When we come back from the break, we will be looking at efforts to end this cycle of violence in the eastern DRC. If you're just joining us, this is Secure the Continent, and we've been discussing the M23 withdrawal. Is it a reality or a mirage? We'll continue our conversation shortly after this break. Do stay with us. You're welcome back to Secure the Continent on News Central Television, and we're discussing the conflict in the eastern DRC, where the M23 rebels say they've withdrawn and they've agreed to the terms of a ceasefire in Nairobi and Angola. But have they really withdrawn from their positions, or is this a mirage? Now, joining me to discuss all of this, I still have with me Gedeon Baleke. He's a political and diplomatic analyst. He joins in live from Washington, D.C. I also have Kambale Masuvali, an analyst at the Center for Research on the Congo. Kinshasa also joins in live from Washington, D.C. Now, Kambale, before we went to the break, we did touch on this issue, the international community, the United States and the European countries that have expressed concerns for the situation in the DRC. Now, beyond expressing concerns and pointing fingers at Kigali, what actions have they taken to address the conflict and bring peace to the region? Or are their hands tied? Because you mentioned, I think it was Gedeon that mentioned geopolitical and strategic interest.
Yes. I mean, there have been things happening in the background, and as I mentioned before, they're using the same models of quiet diplomacy instead of aggressive diplomacy. For example, the French president has used his intelligence services and even himself to bring together Felix Tshisekedi and Paul Kagame in negotiation. We just found on the news today that in Qatar, there is a plan in Dubai to bring together before the end of this month Tshisekedi and Kagame to the table again to find the pieces, a peace solution to the situation. So this quiet diplomacy, the reason it has not worked is because we're not getting to the root of the reason why we have a conflict in the Congo. We're talking about wealth, the mineral resources and so on. But let's take a look at why isn't there aggressive diplomacy? Why aren't there sanctions against Rwanda? The Rwandan government has played an important role in UN peacekeeping missions around the world. They have been deployed in UN peacekeeping missions, be it in Mali, be it in Central African Republic, even in Haiti. You have seen Rwandan soldiers there. Same is true for Uganda, where they even have gone as far as Iraq and Afghanistan to have their troops there. And for French interests, we know, for example, for Rwanda, that they are also in Mozambique as peacekeepers in the country, and there are some concerns around that. So because of the military interest of Western nations, where they do not want their soldiers to die on African soil, they rather have African mercenaries as the Rwandan military to play that role, that's why they're not holding them accountable. The other level of the geostrategic reasons is Rwanda and Uganda have played the role of the access point or the exits of Congo's minerals. It's been documented in numerous reports of the pilfering of Congo's resources, the cobalt, the coltan, the tin, the tungsten, the gold. Some of Congo's minerals are exported illegally, and they are sold through Kigali or through Kampala. For example, Rwanda has mines in their country, but they sell reserves of minerals that they don't have. You know, at one point, Rwanda was the #1 exporter of diamonds in the world. I want to see those diamond mines in Rwanda. Same thing for coltan. They are the #1 exporter of coltan in the world. But the mines that they have do not have the type of output to have about 25 tons a year or more exported out of the country. So we know illegal minerals from the DRC funnels out to Rwanda. Not just because I say that. A couple of weeks ago, Paul Kagame of Rwanda himself, as he was speaking on national TV, did hint at the illegal exploitation of resources coming through Rwanda. So he's aware of that. So because of the pilfering Congo's resources and those who are benefiting from it, because of the military interests of Western nations, they have failed to hold them accountable. And this is similar to what happened in South Africa when there was the apartheid regime. Many Western nations supported the apartheid regime. They knew that South Africans were being mistreated. They were treated less than a human being. They were being killed, put in prison, and yet they did not move to hold the apartheid government accountable. It took a world mobilization to end apartheid. That's how we have to look at the situation in the Congo. Congo has its own issues with its government. We have issues with our military. We have internal issues we have to deal with. But it does not mean that because of those issues, we have to have a nation continuously destabilizing the DRC, using a pretext for that. So we call on Africans, we call on ordinary people to join the Congolese in this struggle and to lift the voice of the Congolese in their home countries and start asking the questions, what is my country doing as relates to Rwanda? You know, Comoros, I think they are leading the African Union this year. What will be the role of the new chairperson of the African Union to hold a nation who is party of the African Union, who actually signed the African Union Charter, and who's actually aggressing another nation, violating its sovereignty? There should be sanctions on the part of the Africans before we call for the one in the West.
Now, Gedeon, last year, towards the end of last year, in a long speech where President Kagame was talking about the Democratic Republic of Congo, he did allege that, you know, President Tshisekedi was using this crisis and pointing fingers at Kigali because he didn't want to have elections. Elections are due in the DRC this year, I believe. So internally, looking at the political structure of the DRC, what are the opposition leaders saying? People like Moise Katumbi, people like Martin Fayulu, and also Jean-Marc Kabonde. What's the position? Are they offering a different solution to this? What's their take on the crisis in the Eastern DRC? And are they all speaking with one voice?
They are not speaking on one voice, and it's obvious politically when there is a challenge in a country, opposition leaders always tend to propose their own solution, knowing that they are looking after votes. They want to be elected in the upcoming elections, and that's way normal. They are not on the same page, but the common ground here, the common interest here is the fact that we know that we have an external forces that are coming to the DRC. They are using some militias in order to destabilize our country. And whenever there is an external enemy, people tend to come together to defend their country. And in Congo, they've shown that at some extent. Though there is a lot of small differences between political leaders, and it's normal. There is always differences between leaders, but on this security issue, we know that we have an enemy, but we just need to find a sustainable solution for the crisis, and that's the common interest of all the political leaders in the DRC, be it Martin Fayulu, or Jean-Pierre Bemba, Moise Katumbi, and so on and so forth. So all of them.
Do you also think the Congolese
Uh,
people have what it takes to solve their own problems without looking to external parties to help them solve their problems?
Absolutely. The sustainable way to resolve this crisis is to resolve our internal problem. At a certain point, we have to acknowledge our responsibility as well in this whole situation. And at the end of the day, we are the DRC, and we are the ones that are being affected by the war, by the crisis. And we need to find a solution which will last, a sustainable solution. And the sustainable solution will only come from the DRC by reforming, for instance, our FRDC, by investing massively in our security, in our intelligence services, by investing as well in the economic and social condition of the people in that region. You know, that those are regions endowed by a lot of natural resources, but we have some of the poorest people in the world. It's such a paradox, and it's not something that should be supported. We need to invest massively in our people. We need to have pragmatic action in order to end poverty and so on and so forth. So those are some of the measures that should be taken internally in order to eradicate all these conditions we've been going through for the last 20 years.
Thank you, Gedeon. Now, Kambale, still talking about solutions to ending the conflict in the DRC. Recently, in order to cut the link between conflict and smuggling, the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo entered a partnership with an Abu Dhabi-registered company to buy as much as 25 tons of hand-mined gold per year. Congolese Finance Minister Nicolas Kazadi said this is not only an answer to the security issues, but it's also contributing to the nation's economy, the effects of which will be significant. End of quote. What do you make of this?
I don't think that adding economic trade, changing the social conditions of the people will bring an end to the conflict. We do have Congolese who are operating in those areas. And whenever we speak with them, they say that the challenge that they face in those projects is usually around corruption, around the power of the state, the military force they can bring to the people. We know what works. We know what will bring about peace. And the Congolese civil society, for the past 2 decades, have screamed the same thing. Until the people who are committing the crimes are held to account for the crimes, it will continue to send a signal that it's okay to kill, it's okay to exploit. So the fundamental call for peace and stability in the Congo and in the Africa Great Lakes region is the creation of a tribunal for Congo. There are Congolese who will be tried. There are neighbor countries and citizens of the neighbor country will be tried, and international actors. So the creation of the tribunal is the one important thing that we must do. The second one is peace in the Congo is also tied to peace and stability in Rwanda. What does that actually mean? Then the Rwandan people need to be able to choose their own leaders. Just today, we found out that John Williams Twali, a Rwandan journalist, has been found dead in the so-called car accident, as the Rwandan police is saying. Most Rwandans don't believe that Twali was killed was in a car accident. They actually believe he was killed. And he was one of the Rwandans inside of Rwanda, exposing the exploitation of the Rwandan people by the Rwandan government. So an inter-Rwanda dialogue, the same way as they're talking about having an inter-Congolese dialogue, we should also talk about the inter-Rwanda dialogue. What will it take for the hundreds of thousands of Rwandans who are still in Congo since 1994 for them to return into the country? And what will it take for the FDLR rebel group, who are Rwandans, to go back to Rwanda and negotiate with the country? So that will be the second path to peace. And the third one, the same reality needs to happen in Uganda. The president of Uganda, Museveni, has been in power since 1986, and he's preparing his son to take power. Uganda is not a monarchy. The people of Uganda want to choose their leaders. So if we look at the internal solution in the Congo of justice with the creation of a tribunal to try the crimes, particularly the crime of the UN mapping exercise report, we talk about the inter-Rwanda dialogue, Rwandans returning to the country and choosing their own leader. Talking about Ugandans taking control of the country so that the leaders that they have represent them. That will allow, not just for the Congo, for the Great Lakes region to prosper. Then we can have economic activity. But unless there is justice, there cannot be peace and stability in the Great Lakes region.
Unless there's justice, there cannot be peace and stability in the Great Lakes region. A fine way to end this conversation. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Kambale, Masuvali, and Gedeon Baleke, for being a good company on today's Secure the Continent. I do appreciate your presence and contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Oleg.